the chat there. So first of all, thank you everyone for joining us right now in the hustle and bustle of the penultimate week, I think, for a lot of you in term. I know that a lot of you are probably supporting tired children and probably tired teachers, including yourself. So hopefully this, though, is going to give you information that you need for planning moving ahead. How we structured today's webinar is I will be talking for the first half, for about 45 minutes, on the appropriate body side of things, because we have some schools joining us this morning that use us for appropriate body services only. Then at 12:15, I will hand over to my colleague, Kyla Belanger, who is the head of ECF and NPQs, and she will talk about the ECF programme. So if you also use our ECF services, you can stay on for that as well. But at 12:15, if you only use us for AB, that is your time. If you'd like to, you're more than welcome to leave. Kyla won't be offended. So I think before we start, Kyla and I would just like to say, first of all, thank you very, very much for everything that you have done for your ECTs this year, for all the hard work that you've done, making sure they're aware of training, making sure that their assessments are being completed, they're having observations, PRs, and we're just currently reading through assessments, and it is so wonderful to hear about the amazing progress that ECTs are making. I know that one of our delivery partners has joined us today. We've got Andrea with us and Sylvia as well. They're reading those assessments, and I know the feedback coming from them is really, really positive. It's so great to hear how well they're doing. Thank you very, very much for facilitating that for your ECTs. And also a huge welcome to any new induction tutors who are working with us next year. I hope that today's session is helpful in terms of setting you up for September 2025. So just some key faces to introduce you to, or reintroduce you to, if you've worked with us previously. You can see here we've got Mark on the left-hand side. He is the Senior Director across the 3 hubs that we work with. So as you can see at the bottom of the screen there, as an appropriate body service, we deliver those appropriate body services across 3 hubs. We've got Chafford 100, Crystal Palace and North East London. So it's likely that your school falls into one of those areas. And my role as the AB lead includes the strategic development of the AB and the operational management as well. I lead the quality assurance function, and we provide training for schools, we visit schools, and also advice where your ECTs might be struggling. And then we've got 2 fantastic people to the right of me. We've got Mel Jones, who is our AB coordinator, and then we also have Sophie, who is our AB administrator, who often are responding to your queries through the AB inbox, and they're responsible for school registrations, onboarding, monitoring our ECT progress, and our communications as well. So that's our central AB team. But also some familiar faces for you as well if you're in one of our regions that is supported by our fantastic delivery partners. So we're delighted to be working with Catalyst Academies, Seven Kings High School and Waltham Forest Local Authority next year to provide that localised support for those schools that fall into these regions. And our delivery partners bring many years of experience of induction, and they will continue to support you. They can support you with technical support with ECT Manager. They may be doing monitoring visits. You can reach out to them for queries. So they would be generally your first point of contact with AB queries. But if you do have queries about an ECT that's struggling, as well as telling Andrea and Sylvia and Chris, please also loop me in, because that's something that I need to be aware of. So those some delivery partners and then our AB team. So in terms of today's content, what we're going to be talking about is we'll be talking about registration, our AB fees. We'll talk about entitlement, to revisit those and what they are and cover. And then also a rundown of our agenda, roles and responsibilities, PPRs. We'll go on about observations as well. And you can see we'll conclude by looking at non-standard ECTs, including part-time ECTs, and also maybe some situations with absences or maternity leave. We'll talk about what happens with ECTs who are not on track. I'll touch as well about QA visits and key dates and questions. So that's what we're going to talk about until about 12:15. If you have questions, please feel free to drop them into the chat. we will endeavour to stop periodically to pick up those questions so that we have them answered for you. So in terms of the role of the appropriate body, I think it was just worth sharing a quick note with you in terms of the role of the appropriate body. So the old name was awarding body, which makes sense, this idea of you're awarding the fact that they have concluded induction. We're no longer that, we are the appropriate body. And the way that I look at that is that we are, as an organisation, ensuring that induction is being done appropriately. It's been done in line with the statutory guidance. So every ECT must be registered with an appropriate body. That's the DfE statutory entitlement. And we've got the two roles there that you can see on the screen. So we're monitoring the support. We're making sure that ECTs are essentially getting the statutory entitlements that I'll talk about in a second. And we support you as head teachers, as induction tutors, to ensure that you're up to date with the guidance and you're able to follow it. The second role we have is monitoring of assessment. So, you know, we essentially are the ones that make that final judgment with the head teacher's recommendation as to whether or not that ECT has passed induction. That's why we ask you to submit to us those assessments, and we look at the evidence that's within those assessments that contribute to that decision as to whether or not that ECT has finally met those teacher standards at the end of 6 terms. We read every single PPR and we read every single assessment, and we give feedback on that, and we do that for all of our ECTs. We do have guidance as well on how to write these in our handbook on ECT Manager and resources. I'll touch upon assessments and PPRs in a second. I'm using the term PPR. I'm just so accustomed to the acronyms. A lot of you will know what I'm talking about, but if not, I'm talking about professional progress reviews. I'll talk about the rhythm of the kind of the year for an ECT in a second. I'll explain to you when PPRs take place and assessments take place. So I'll let you just read through these 9 tiles that are there on the board. On the board, I'm such a teacher, on the screen. All of these entitlements that I've displayed with you here are not my personal opinion about what an ECT should have. This is what's laid out in that document that you can see on the right-hand side. So that document, the Induction for Early Career Teachers, is essentially our Bible. It's bookmarked on my browser. It's the webpage that I visit most frequently, hands down. And that's because we're continually referring to it to make sure that our advice is underpinned by the statutory guidance. We are applying the statutory guidance to ECT situations. So a lot of these I don't think are new to you. You're probably familiar with all of these things. I think a note on mentor meetings that these ideally should be timetabled within, they should be timetabled within the teaching day. If that's not possible, they must take place within directed time, but ideally they should be timetabled during the teaching day. Another thing at the bottom in the middle, we can see ECTs in FE and sixth form colleges. So if you are working in a further education setting or a sixth form college, then ECTs who are working solely in those settings need to have a minimum of 10 days teaching experience in a secondary school setting. And there is a document that we have on ECT Manager under the resources section, which you can use to record that 10-day experience. It doesn't have to happen all in year 1. It doesn't have to happen all in year 2. It can happen any point, but it needs to have happened by the end of induction. And then I think this last one here is the most important one, and that is act early. So you as an induction tutor and head teachers, possibly if you're joining us today, have those mechanisms built in. If you're following our processes, you're following our timelines to monitor the ECT's progress. And if at any point you have some quibbles, you're not quite concerned that actually they're not where they should be in terms of an ECT, let's say in term 2 of year 1 or ECT in term 1 of year 2, then take action immediately. What you don't want to do is kind of bury your head in the sand and hope that it will get better. So what we want to see is support going in for that ECT, and I'll talk to you a little bit about that towards the end of the presentation, which hopefully puts them back on track. And for the vast majority of ECTs that go on to a stage 1 support plan, they come back off. They just had a bit of a wobble. The school has put that extra support in them for them, and they get back on track, which serves the ECT, but also serves your pupils to make sure that your pupils, your students, are getting the best possible teaching. So whilst I'm here, it would be remiss for me to not mention about registering ECTs and how we do that. So as mentioned before, ECTs must be registered with an appropriate body for induction. ECTs cannot start their induction until their appropriate body has been agreed. So you can see that statutory guidance there in that blue box. That's why we've been contacting you. That's why we've been encouraging you to try and get ECTs that are joining you registered this side of the summer holidays. We don't want you going into your lovely, well-deserved holidays not having registered your ECTs. We do know you might be in a setting whereby you haven't finished recruiting if you go into the summer holidays, in which case, not to worry. We are working over the summer holidays. So if you need to go onto ECT Manager in the summer holidays, maybe you're secondary and you're coming in for your GCSE results or A-level, you could do it when you're there. To start an ECT registration, you need their TRN, their date of birth, their email address, and their name. So let's say, for example, you start it today with those 4 pieces of data. Technically, even if you did it in September and you concluded and finished that registration in September, the registration date would be before the 1st of September, so that wouldn't cause an issue. So just a plea from us, if you could try and get those ECTs registered as soon as possible, that would be fantastic. If you're having any issues, just reach out to us at the AB team. So the other things is making sure you know about the ECT program type. For the vast majority of you, that will be a lead provider route. That's using the National Institute of Teaching. That's the one that we deliver, but also Ambition or Teach First if you're only working with us for AB. And then if you are using a lead provider route, register your ECTs on the DFE on that website. And just a reminder that if you are working with us for your lead provider program, so we also provide the ECF training side of things to you as a Teaching School Hub, there is that onboarding spreadsheet that's attached to the bulletin. If you haven't done so already, please do download that and send that over to us. So, and then just a note there on fees, £495 per ECT for the 2 years, okay? And then if it's a school-based programme, i.e. your school is designing their own programme using the school-based materials based on the ITT ECF, then there would be that fidelity checking fee. And it's quite complicated that, so I'm not going to go into lots of detail now, but the fees are on the website. So if you want to have a look at that, and if you have any questions about those fees, then please do get in contact. Right then, so, right. I've got a question here from Erifana, thank you. So mentor meeting record and lesson observation form. So I'm going to touch a bit on documentation, Erifana, but you see on ECT Manager, if you go into the resources section right now, we've set up new folders, and that's because we're literally today uploading the new documentation. So if you go onto ECT Manager right now, you'll see the new folders are in place, and then today we're uploading the new templates. They will be available for you by the end of today. Right then, a note on roles and responsibilities, always worth me going through this. So all of this is taken from the DFE guidance, which you can read. It is online if you were to Google the DFE induction statutory guidance, but also we'll be putting this in our handbook as well. So the key roles are outlined there on the screen. And the first one is conducting pre-employment checks. So it would be the head teacher to make sure those are happening, making sure they have QTS. And also the head teacher would be responsible for making sure that a suitable post for induction is in place. So for example, if the ECT is recruited to teach maths, but then they turn up in September and all of a sudden they're teaching art or history, that would not be a suitable post for induction. ECTs are also required to have the same planning and assessment tasks as a teacher working in their school as well. So, for example, it wouldn't be suitable for an ECT to hold a cover supervisor role because they're not involved in the same planning and assessment tasks as a classroom-based teacher. ECTs also need to teach the same pupils routinely, which wouldn't be the case for cover supervisor. So it's your head teacher who makes sure that there is a suitable post in place. And the second is appointing us as an appropriate body. And then also the head teacher is responsible for making sure that the progress is reviewed regularly. Now, whilst you are doing that as an induction tutor, you're kind of involved in that on a kind of day-to-day basis. It is the head teacher who's responsible for doing that. So if an assessment or PPR is not submitted to us, and we haven't heard the reasons why, we don't know quite why, after a couple of days we might reach out to the head teacher to find out what's going on there. But we would always reach out to you first as an induction tutor. But that's why we need to involve the head teacher in that, because they've got responsibility to make sure that PPRs and assessments are completed at least once a term. And then wherever possible, just to note, we advise that the induction tutor and head teacher are two separate people. It's not always possible to do this. I'm aware of that. Some of you work in very small schools. However, if possible, it would be good to have an induction tutor and head teacher as two separate people. It just strengthens your QA process because there's two separate people involved and you can support each other as well. Now let's come to, I think the vast majority of you here today are induction tutors, and these are your roles and responsibilities. So the first one is to ensuring that ECT teaching is formally observed for a full lesson and quality feedback is provided linked to the teacher's standards. We're always going to come back to the teacher standards. As an AB, we're quite obsessed about them. But that's because we have to make that final judgment at the end. Are they meeting the teacher standards? We're really going to concentrate on them for the 2 years of induction. Now, we ask that an observation takes place once a half term because the statutory guidance says it should take place at regular intervals. Therefore, that's once a half term. And so we're similar to other ABs in that regard. A change, though, for 25-26. Is that we have had a routine of uploading observations once a half term. But from 25-26, if it better suits you, if you would like to only upload one observation per term, that is absolutely fine as well. I will share with you a calendar towards the end of the presentation about suggested dates for that. But another change as well is that we are requesting that that one observation that we're asking to be uploaded is uploaded at the same time that you complete the PPR and the assessment for that term. We're just trying to streamline things a little bit for you so you don't have to keep on going back to ECT Manager. So I hope that's clear in terms of the two changes there. A, still keep on doing the half-termly observations, but upload it once a term. And B, you can upload it at the same time as the PPRs and assessments. Okay. Obviously, linked to that are those observations and you coordinating that as an induction tutor, making sure they're being observed by a suitable person within your setting, is you writing the progress reviews, submitting those onto ECT Manager. You may ask other colleagues to contribute to those because you have other colleagues that work really closely with your ECTs, but ultimately it's you who are responsible for writing them and submitting them on ECT Manager. That's why colleagues such as, for example, mentors, don't have access to ECT Manager because that's not their role. And I'll talk about the difference between your role and the mentor's role in just a second. As alluded to earlier on, if ECTs are not on track to meet the teacher standards by the end of their induction period, then an ECT needs to be aware. We need to set goals for that ECT and objectives, and you need to put in extra support and monitoring for a period of time for that ECT. Typically, it's 4 weeks, and we have got a support plan template for that, but I'll talk in a bit more detail about that process further on. And then also to liaise with us. So we tend to liaise with you directly as an induction tutor, and we know that you're our main point of contact and vice versa. So if you've got an ECT going on maternity leave, let us know. If you have an ECT that's maybe experiencing some long-term illness, let us know. If you have an ECT who's not on track, let us know. Have an ECT that's resigned, let us know. So just keep us in the loop so we're aware, and then we can advise you on different scenarios as well. I know I'm going through the presentation right now. I don't expect you to retain all the information, and let's say an ECT goes on maternity leave, we'll then remind you and let you know what happens then, okay? So just keep us up to date with the circumstances for your ECTs. And the last thing is professional development. So monitoring, providing guidance for ECTs in terms of making sure that they're engaging with that early career teacher programme. Now, that's why they have that 10% and 5%. So as well as engaging with their mentor meetings, which actually is part of the Early Career Teacher Programme, those mentor meetings are following a schedule set out by the Early Career Teacher Programme. They also can observe others, but they have that 10% or 5% reduction to engage with that Early Career Teacher Programme. Now, on that note of timetable reduction, just to be really clear, that reduction that ECTs receive is on top of their PPA. So let's say, and it should be 10% of a main scale teacher who doesn't have any other responsibilities. So in your school, let's say typically a main scale teacher teaches 20 hours a week. Then your ECT 1 will teach 18 hours because they've had 10% of 20 taken down to 18. And your ECT 2 would have 19 because they've had 5% of 20. And that gives them 19 hours. The guidance doesn't say it's a number like hours that they need reduction. It is a percentage because they're recognising that schools have different timetables. So that's why it's percentage. Righty-ho, I'm going to pause here and see if there's any questions. I think.
No,
Okay.
all good, Kate.
All good, lovely. Amelia, I think you're new to the role, aren't you? So I've got a note, Amelia, that you're taking on the role in September. So first of all, thank you very much for joining us today. Could you just send me an email, Amelia? I think you're within it, just saying, could I be added to the bulletins now? And we'll do that. Okay. Role of the mentor. So I just mentioned that distinction between the head induction tutor and mentor. As I just outlined, that induction tutor is the formal assessment role. You are appointed by the head teacher with the skills and the ability to assess an ECT's progress and the ability to judge if there needs to be extra support in place for this ECT. That's not the case for a mentor. I'll just let you read through the responsibilities of a mentor for a second. So as you can see, that mentor role is more support, a supportive role, guiding them through the ECTP and meeting with them on a weekly in year 1 or fortnightly basis in year 2. They're supporting the ECT through their induction. Their role is not to assess them. So it's really being clear as an induction tutor that if your mentor is supporting you with conducting observations of your ECT, which I'll talk about in a little bit, what quality assurance mechanisms do you have in place to make sure that that role of assessment isn't just sitting with that mentor, because that's not necessarily their role. And secondly, it can come undone a little bit sometimes. The mentor and the ECT work really closely together. They will form that really close relationship. And also the mentor is not appointed, typically an induction tutor is a senior member of staff. The mentor is not appointed to make those assessments. It is the induction tutor. But I will talk about that in just a second. So PPRs is something I've alluded to. Sorry for using those acronyms. And assessments. These are you submitting to the appropriate body these termly reports that ECTs must have. PPR takes place in terms 1 and 2 of year 1, and then terms 4 and 5 of year 2. So let's say, for argument's sake, you've got an ECT who starts in September. You'll be writing them a PPR in autumn and in spring, and they'll have an assessment in term 3, and that repeats then going into year 2. A PPR in autumn, a PPR in spring, their final assessment in term 6 in summer 2027. Gosh, I'm going ahead now to there. Yes, that's correct. The PPRs are there to check that the ECT is on track to meet the teacher standards. It involves a summary of the ECT's progress for that term and their current term. We have got dates for you to kind of adhere to follow those, to report to us essentially. Those dates are calculated to give us enough time to review them, and then also build in a little bit of a bumper time before the end of term to make sure that those PPRs are submitted termly, because then we have to do some reporting on the other side of it. So there is thought and process in terms of why those due dates are there. And thank you in advance of you striving to meet them. If you ever encounter any difficulties, then please let us know. But we try and support your workload by always publishing them well in advance. We will share them with you if you haven't already got them via our bulletin. So our AB only schools, we haven't shared those dates yet, but you will always have them well in advance so you can plan your work correspondingly. They're all completed via ECT Manager. You will get reminders as well as from us via our bulletins, but also via ECT Manager, which automatically send reminders. The PPR is a shorter report. It's 250 words on strengths. Doesn't need to be lengthy. So 250 words on strengths, commenting on about 5 substandards, citing the evidence that links to your judgments as to why this is a strength, and then 2 SMART targets of 100 to 150 words. So it's not a really long report that you need to complete. You would discuss the PPR with the ECT. A professional progress review is actually a meeting with the ECT, and then you record it on ECT Manager. ECTs need to comment on that as well before it is submitted to the appropriate body. So just build that in a little bit. So I know that the PPRs in autumn are due on the 1st of December. You don't want to start writing them on the 30th of November, because that's not giving you enough time to have the ECT comment and you to meet the ECT. So you'll need to build backwards. If you've got 12 ECTs, that's going to look very different compared to if you've got 1 ECT. So just a word of advice there as someone who has lived the induction tutor experience, plan backwards in terms of getting those completed. And then assessments are the longer reports, and they come at the end of year 1 in term 3 and term 2. These are more detailed, a summary of evidence against the teacher standards. These are the ones that are signed by the head teacher because it's the head teacher's recommendation. So term 3, term 6, those assessments, factor in the fact that your head teacher needs to sign them as well. Okay, and then I think that summarises what we do there in terms of lesson observations, PPRs and assessments. So Kerry, I've got a question here. Is it possible to see some examples of PPRs? Yes, Kerry, it is. As I said, we're kind of doing a bit of a changeover of our templates for 25-26. We're looking to slightly change the PPR template. We're trying to see where we can slim things down a little bit. But what I will do is upload an example to our PPR folder that's a 24-25 exemplar. The changes that we make won't be huge or ginormous. But when you look at that example, just bear in mind it's a 24-25 example. Nearer the time when we start writing PPRs in autumn, I'll make sure there's some examples for you that really follow that 25 template. Okay. As I said, I'm not expecting any huge changes. It's going to be 250 words on strengths, 100 to 150 words on 2 SMART targets. That's the bulk of that report. Now, lesson observations. I alluded to this earlier on. Lesson observations is a statutory entitlement. ECTs should have regular observations at regular intervals, and this should be carried out by the induction tutor or another suitable member of staff. We say that because I know that I'm talking to some settings at the moment whereby they have 1 ECT, in which case it's more feasible for an induction tutor to be regularly observing that ECT. We have some other settings whereby I've got one school that's got 30 ECTs. So it's not going to be the same approach. So I have got a suggestion on how that might be managed within your setting. But it is important that you as an induction tutor, if you're not conducting that observation, you are coordinating that process and you are quality assuring it as well. ECTs should be given their feedback promptly, verbally, and then given the written feedback. It should, again, sorry, my obsession there with the teacher standards. We have got a form which I'll show you, but there's space to record the teacher standards. And that's a really useful document to capture evidence and that you can refer to directly when you're writing PPRs and assessments. It helps you gather a bank of evidence, essentially. Now, this is a possible ECT observation model used by some of our schools that have got quite a few ECTs. As you can see, the induction tutor is not the person conducting all the observations, but they are using suitable members of staff to conduct that observation as well. I'm not saying that you can't use your mentors. I would advise that if possible, you avoid doing that and you look to senior members of staff to conduct that observation. But like I say, your mentor could help out, but I wouldn't overly rely on the mentors doing all those observations either. A note on the form. So this is another change we've done for 25 onwards, September onwards. We've been obviously listening to feedback throughout the year, and I talked about the fact that we do school visits. It's really useful for us. We get feedback from schools. We always ask what's going well, what can make your life even better, what could help you do your job even more effectively. So we have taken away the highlighting on the lesson observation form. So that just kind of streamlines things a little bit. And you'll note as well, we used to have a strengths, an areas for development, and a target. We've taken away the areas for development section and we've put target. So you just have strengths and target. So agreed SMART actions essentially following that. And it's just to sort of seeing where we could streamline things. You can see as well, we have a space here where I'm showing my cursor in terms of that question based on evidence of this lesson, but also general progress that ECT is making, taking into consideration in-school monitoring. Is the ECT likely to satisfactorily meet the teacher standards by the end of induction? So you always come back to that question, is the ECT on track? Now, we have that reference to other in-school monitoring, because let's say an ECT has a lesson that is completely atypical to her day-to-day practice and everything else is going really, really well for them, but it just have a bad one-off lesson. It happens to the best of us. So it's worth taking into consideration other in-school monitoring as well. So it's not just on like 1 hour. You're also thinking about typicality. So this is the new form that we're going to upload for 25-26. So hopefully the question earlier one, I think from Erifana, was when the template's going to be there. This is going to be uploaded this afternoon. I think another thing to note whilst I'm talking about some changes is there's a change as well to our assessment form. So our final assessment form has a space whereby you have targets for each of the teacher standards. So moving forward, your year 2 finishing induction, we changed that to only 3 targets. So you will capture the strengths against each of the teacher standards because you're demonstrating to us that they're meeting them, but we're also stripping back the amount of targets that they get. So their final assessment, they only have 3 targets. For their end of year 1, we're keeping those targets per teacher standard because they're still in the midst of induction. But again, that's a bit of a change. And we've stripped away area for development and target. We're just going to have target. So a note on part-time ECTs. So ECTs can complete induction on a part-time ECT. We calculate it pro rata. So if you have an ECT, if they're on, let's say, 0.5, they're working 2.5 days a week, then it would take them 4 years to complete induction rather than 2 years because they're working at half the rate as a full-time ECT. They're entitled to do that full 4 years. They would still have a PPR every term because ECTs must have a termly report, but their assessments would take place at the end of the equivalent of year 1. So that 0.5 ECT their end of year 1 assessment doesn't take place until after 2 years. However, little caveat for you if you've got any part-time ECTs. Once an ECT is completed, 2 calendar years of induction, but not necessarily the pro rata equivalent of 2 years, it's possible for that part-time ECT to apply for reduced induction once they've done 2 calendar years. So let's say that you've got an ECT who started in September 2023. We're coming up to July 2025. They've been part-time, so they haven't completed the pro rata equivalent, but they've done 2 years. They could then be in a position to apply for reduced induction. They're entitled to their full time. So if they don't want to do that and they want to do the equivalent pro rata, they're entitled to that. But if the school's in agreement, they're meeting the teacher standards, and the ECT is happy to end early, they can do that. We would do that, agree that towards the end of about term 5-ish. So for that example I gave you, we were agreeing those reduced inductions around April, May time for part-time ECTs. It's possible to have ECTs work on supply contracts as well, but just like other ECTs, they need all their entitlements and they need to be registered before they start. The minimum they do is a term. So they can't come to you and do 6 weeks in induction. They have to be doing at least a term for it to count. And then also just a note on reduced inductions, if you've got anyone joining you in September, but they've got extensive prior experience, let's say they worked in an independent school for a number of years, or maybe they worked in as an unqualified teacher, or maybe they worked in an academy as an unqualified teacher, then they are a candidate for a reduced induction because they're coming to induction having had lots of prior experience. So the phrasing, again, I'll go back to that Bible that informs what we need to the guidance we apply. It's extensive prior experience of teaching whole classes to the teacher standards. So training doesn't factor in that. So if they were training and they were teaching, that's not the same as being employed as a teacher. But normally this applies to teachers who gain QTS via assessment only. So get in contact if you think that applies to one of your ECTs. We have an application form and we can take you through that. And the last note is on extensions. So if you have an ECT who reaches 30 or more days absence in 1 year of induction, then that year of induction will automatically be extended. So let's say you had a year 1 ECT right now who actually had 35 days of absence in year 1. Then you wouldn't be completed an end of year 1 assessment right now. ECT manager would not let you do that. It would turn that end of year 1 assessment into a PPR, and their end of year 1 assessment would be completed in around October time. So 35 days is about 7 weeks. So it'd be completed around October time, that end of year 1 assessment. They are a year 1 ECT until that point. Then year 2 would start, and you'd have 3 terms from that start point onwards. It's not designed to be punitive. It's actually designed to give the ECT a fair chance at meeting the teacher standards, because it's acknowledging that with 30 days, that's almost a sixth of that induction year 1 or year 2. That's a huge amount of time. And so they're a bit of a disadvantage compared to someone else. So that is why that extension is there. The exemption to that is statutory leave. So maternity leave, adoption leave, paternity leave, any statutory leave, it doesn't stop induction. So when an ECT comes back, they either can finish if 6 terms have elapsed since their start point, or they can extend it. They can choose to extend it to compensate for the fact that they have missed a chunk of their time. They can extend it by a term or all of the time that they missed whilst they were on this statutory leave. And then I think I've covered this quite clearly. I hope this message has come through, but let us know if you've got any concerns about your ECTs. Our intention is that every ECT passes induction. We want our ECTs to pass induction. I'll caveat that with that, providing they're meeting the teacher standards. We want people to be successful. We want to retain people. We want people to be the best teachers they can be. We have had some scenarios whereby despite all that support that's gone in, it hasn't necessarily had the intended effect. But 95% of the time, it's having that intended effect. It's getting those ECTs back on track to pass induction, to give your pupils the best possible chance of success and the best education possible. What we don't want is there to be any surprises for ECTs. So please don't sit on any queries or concerns. Reach out to us and we will advise. ECTs can't carry on unaware, carrying on and thinking that everything is fine. It is statutory that we help you as a school set goals. That's why we have a support plan. So we have very clear targets. We have areas for support mechanisms, which are really tailored to their areas for development, those targets, and then monitoring. It's very clear for the ECT, how is their progress against those targets going to be monitored. We've got a template for that. From September onwards, we're going to have a short little video as well and a dedicated handbook for any of you, if you're new to running in support plans, having that situation. We're here to help. We don't expect you to have all the answers. We're here to help if you need, but just let us know. So key dates, which I've talked about here, and you can see those changes there. So lesson observations, they're still half-termly, but the ones with the asterisks, you don't need to upload to ECT Manager. If it works for you, please do. No reason why you don't need to upload, but if you would like to just upload one per term, that's fine. The caveat to that is if you have an ECT not on track. If you've got an ECT not on track, then we need to see those half-termly observations. We have pushed back the final assessment for year twos. We've pushed it back. It was quite early this year. We've tried to push it back so it's coming in 3 weeks into June, or 3 weeks into that summer term. And you can see as well those dates in terms of the lesson observations can be uploaded the same time that you do the PPRs or assessments as well, just to help you in case that's supportive at all. Now, just a recap on You Said We Did. These are some of the things that we were able to make changes to whilst the year has been going on. As I'm sure you can imagine, we can't make wholesale changes to quite a lot of our approaches whilst the academic year is going, but that's why I've been really busy since around March onwards, really evaluating our systems, our processes, so that we can make them even more effective for you. So here's a summary of some changes we've made mid-year. Mental meetings do not need to be uploaded to ECT Manager. Our communications for our AB only schools, we've kind of stepped back a little bit, so we're sending those a fortnight, and observations now can be uploaded once a term and by the PPR assessment of that half term. We're also doing our Keep in Touch 2 times a year rather than 3. So just so you know, a Keep in Touch form is a really quick MS form. We'll send out one in October and we'll do one in May just to check that everything else is going forward. We do have mental meeting templates, and we strive to create mental meeting templates for different lead providers. So Ambition, Teach First, National Institute of Teaching. Where possible, use the platform that's associated with your lead provider. So with National Institute of Teaching, use the platform that's associated with the National Institute of Teaching. But if you're ever having any issues or you prefer to use the Word template, it is there. As long as the mental meetings are recorded, either on the platform or via the template if needed, that's good practice. And then for 25-26, just some new things that are coming your way. So it's the Keep in Touch, sorry, is a new thing. We've done a 1-page summary of induction that's been requested by some of our schools. Streamlining of AB documentation, which I've talked about. We're going to put together a suite of exemplars and PPRs across the different settings. So if you're working in primary, we're going to try and have a primary example for you, secondary, sixth form. The Teacher Standards Tracker is also now optional. A lot of our schools really enjoy using the Teacher Standards Tracker and use it to their best use. But some schools have got different approaches to tracking that progress. So it's no longer compulsory, it is optional. And I've talked about the mental meeting templates, and I've talked about the support that we're going to provide for ECTs that are not on track. So we're here if you ever need advice. If you ever need a bit of challenge or support, just get in touch and we will be there to support you. Any questions at this point? Louise is shaking her head, which is good. I made everything clear. Thanks, Louise. Leah, yeah, go ahead. Hi, Leah, welcome back.
Hello, thank you, thank you. I did just put it in the chat, but it disappeared, so I don't know if that message exists anymore. But it was just about the mentor meetings, just to clarify. So with GTT, can we choose then as a school whether we would like our mentors to record the mentor meetings on GTT or on the Performer? Just because our mentors have really struggled using the GTT platform in order to actually log them.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel if your mentors, Kyla's going to talk to this, I think, in just a minute. And I think there's been a bit of a shift in terms of that platform. So listen to Kyla. I think my recommendation is, I know that once you get your head around using the platform, it would make those meetings even better.
Yeah.
But if collectively, if it's, you know, real struggle and you provided training for that mentor and they're still having difficulties, you can fall back on that template, Leah. But I think the preference is try and use that platform if possible.
Yeah.
But like I said, becoming really difficult for mentors, you could use that template. It's there as a support mechanism.
It may have changed in the last year. It was more that we couldn't find a section for them to kind of see like actions that they needed to complete in order to meet their kind of like weekly targets. So we were then doing it on a whole separate document, and it just was a bit complicated. But I'll wait and hear the changes and then we can.
Sure. You want to work efficiently. I get it. And obviously, Delphine, I see your message as well. I know there were some issues at the beginning of the year that were outside of the team's control, but I'll let Kyla speak to that.
Thank you.
Thanks, Leah, and thanks, Delphine, as well. Any other questions? Okay, I have dropped into the chat the form. So if you joined a little bit later than 11:30 because you were dealing with a bunch of children or whatever it is, if you could already use that QR code that Kyla's showing, or also the link I've dropped into the chat to capture your attendance, that'd be great. I'm going to hand over to Kyla momentarily. If you are only AB with us and you don't want to hear about the ECF programme, then you are welcome to leave. But if you want to hear about it, see what it entails, please hang on because it looks just fantastic. I'm really excited about it. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Kate. Yep. So as Kate said, this is a bit of a transition point in the meeting. I saw that some people had only recently joined. I think potentially that's because you're using a different appropriate body. And so you didn't want to hear Kate's messages just to confuse against the guidance that you're receiving from your appointed appropriate body, which is perfectly fine. But yeah, just to be aware, we are switching to the early career framework. So that's the training program side of things. If your school has chosen a different provider for the training program, you can drop off. I won't be offended. And I think I'll probably wait 1 minute before we get started with the training side of things. Oh, I think actually the numbers have settled a bit, so I might just make a start now. Lovely. So thank you, everybody. My name's Kyla Belanger. I'm the head of ECF and NPQs for eSouth in London. Really nice to see lots of you again. Kate and I really like doing things like this because we communicate with loads of you like pretty regularly across the year, but don't actually see you or can't just pop down the hall and stick our head into your office and say hello over a cup of tea. So these are really nice opportunities to actually see you. So I'll be covering different parts of the training program in my little section now for about 40 minutes or so. Here's what I'm going to touch on. I'll talk about key framework changes that are taking place from September onwards. Then I'll also talk about specific program changes that are taking place from September onwards with the NIOT's Year 1 program. I'll show you a sneak peek of some of the new features that are going to come into effect from September, so the diagnostic tool for your Year 1 ECTs. I'll talk a bit about our new online learning platform. So again, a little sneak peek, but we are changing from GTT, but have no fear. It's all coming from the same organization that creates GTT, and it really is just like a hybrid version of GTT. It's all the bits that we liked about GTT without the bits that we didn't love so much, and it's being reshaped with all of your feedback in mind. So that's really exciting, and I'll show you a bit about that. And then we'll just look towards some next steps and just some things to make sure that you're on track to get your ECF program up and running from September onwards. So much like Kate, if you've got burning questions, do drop them into the chat, but I will be stopping periodically, probably towards the end of each of these sections to see if anybody's got any questions before I move forward. So the first thing that I wanted to touch on was a change to the framework itself. So when we talk about the framework, we're talking about the curriculum that underpins all of the lead providers' training programs that they then go and create based off of this framework. So in 2019, the original Early Career Framework was written, and it was modeled very similarly off of the core content framework. For some of you who have been induction tutors or managing mentors for years and years, you'd be familiar with the core content framework because it underpins what trainee teachers learned in their ITE programs. But those two documents sat very much as separate entities, even though they looked very similar, sounded very similar. And we know, not only based on what ECTs say, but also, based on the intent behind the Early Career Framework, that a lot of the content from the ITT programs is revisited on purpose, intentionally, in the ECF training programs. And that's regardless of what lead provider you follow or you choose to use. And so what the government has done as one of their new initiatives is they've reshaped what this framework looks like, and they've merged the core content framework with the early career framework, and they've created what they're calling the ITT ECF, which is a bit of a mouthful, but it is essentially like a hybrid version of those two frameworks put together. It is the 3-year coherent curriculum that kind of follows a teacher from the ITE training year through the 2 years of ECF. And so it's that 3-year package, but it is not talking specifically about any of the training providers. It is the curriculum. So it sets out what we want over the course of 3 years, every teacher who enters our profession to know and know how to do. All the skills and knowledge of our profession. So it's a really, really kind of central document to any of the lead providers. And it's been rewritten and reshaped. And I'm just going to tease out some of the changes that you'll start to, or you may have already started to see. If you're a head teacher, you probably get regular DFE updates, and you've probably seen some of this drip fed through. We've been trying to drip feed it through in our weekly bulletins as well, but you might be seeing some new terminology. So we've got, and we love an acronym, don't we? So we've got the ECTE, which is the Early Career Teacher Entitlement. So that sort of sits like an umbrella, and that encapsulates everything that an ECT is entitled to receive. And Kate talked about these on that slide at the beginning of her presentation when she showed you the 9 different tiles. That's what the Early Career Teacher Entitlement is. So it's the training program that they're entitled to receive based off of the ITT ECF. It's the fact that they're entitled to get dedicated mentor support, a reduction to their timetable, etc., regular observations, if those sorts of things. So the way that we talk about their entitlements now has changed a little bit, but that sort of is just semantics there for you to know about. Another new acronym. And then another new acronym is the one that we're using when we talk about the training program itself. So the training program is just one of the many entitlements that ECTs get. We've always kind of called it the ECF or the ECF program or the training program, but now the government would like us to call it the ECTP. So that's the Early Career Teacher Program. But that is only talking about the training program that starts from September 25 onwards based on the ITT ECF. So it's a bit different from the ECF training program, which is based off of the old Early Career Framework. But again, a lot of this is just semantics. Your ECTs on the ground won't feel any of these changes. It's just for you to be aware of in terms of the terminology that the DFE use, the terminology that we now have to use as a provider. In the practical reality of things, the ITT ECF, whilst it merges all the core content framework strands with the Early Career Framework, it has actually also redesigned some of those strands. So you'll notice if you were quite close to the ground with the CCF and the ECF, you'll notice that there's some new learn that and learn how to statements. And rightfully so, because they are really sort of identifying or going further to develop what ECT should know and be able to do around supporting our students with SEND and needs, or additional needs, I should say. There's also some additional strands that are explicitly referencing developing oracy, developing early literacy as well, early literacy skills, and also referencing developing ECT's evidence literacy. The document itself also makes a very explicit sort of increased focus on engaging critically with research. We already did that in year 2 of our training program, so that was really good to see. And that didn't require much of a change to our program, in essence, because we already do that a lot in year 2. And there's a real emphasis now, and a real conscious emphasis on the spiral nature of the ITT ECF. I think if you've been an induction tutor for more than 1 year, you will inevitably have heard one of your ECTs saying, "Oh yeah, but I learned that last year." Or yeah, it was a good session, but I did that last year. And we know that ECTs are revisiting things that they will have been exposed to in ITT, and that is very much intentional. And we often reframe it with the ECTs in a way that they can recognize in their own contexts, which is that you would never just tell a child something once and never revisit it again, but expect that it was learned. And the same really applies to novice teachers in our profession, is that yes, they may have been exposed to some of that learning in their ITE program, but what they didn't, for the most part, have was the opportunity to embed it consistently and consistently well in their practice. So they will purposefully be revisiting some concepts that they were exposed to in their ITT program. And that's because it is very much a spiral curriculum. And that is explicit in the document now. So there's no smoke and mirrors. There's no pretending that it doesn't repeat information from ITT. It does on purpose, because that's how teachers develop stronger mental models over time. But then the NIOT and each of the lead providers really have gone a step further, because they were then asked to make changes to their programs from September onwards, because the curriculum itself has changed. So naturally, we would have to be changing with the curriculum and the framework. And so these are some of the changes that you're going to see made to the NIOT's program specifically. So all of our new Year 1 ECTs from September will receive a training program that is in line with the ITT ECF. So there is explicit learning within our training sessions and within our self-study that addresses the new statements that weren't previously in the ECF as a document. And that program is called the ECTP. However, our current Year 1 ECTs, who are going to be in Year 2 next year, they started induction under the old framework, the early career framework, and we can't change their framework halfway through the program. We're not allowed. None of the providers are allowed to do that. So your second year ECTs next year will receive a training program that is in line with the early career framework, which is the old framework. Still a great framework, still independently validated and signed off by the EEF and the DFE and Ofsted as well. And in terms of the kind of practical experience of your ECTs, they won't notice a difference. There will be absolutely no differentiating between, oh, you guys get the new program and you guys get the old program. We won't even use that language, but you may very well hear the acronyms ECTP and ECF. And I'm going to give myself a 6-week grace period to try to retrain my brain on those acronyms, but we're going to try really hard to make sure that when we are talking about the ECTP, we are talking about your Year 1 ECTs who are following the new framework. And when we talk about the ECF, we are talking about your Year 2 ECTs who are following the old, equally good, but older now framework. I hope that makes sense. It really is a lot of semantics, which we love to see every 5 years or so in this profession, don't we? This is probably the biggest change, actually, that will be felt on the ground and in schools. And in yesterday's session, Kate and I, we had quite a few questions coming through about this. So I think probably at the end of this slide, I'll stop, Kate, and pick up any funding questions, particularly about mentors. So you may have already caught wind of this. Again, DFE have been making some updates over emails. We've been trying to make updates over emails as well. But there is quite a seismic shift to the way in which we've been asked to train mentors. And again, this applies to all lead providers, not just us. But the mentor training program is going from 2 years to 1 year. But that is only for new mentors who are joining the mentor training program from September. That is not going to be applied retrospectively to any mentor who joined the training program this year. So any mentor who joined the mentor training program this year and did Year 1 of the mentor training program this year will still complete Year 2 of the mentor training program next year. And you as schools will still receive your funding to have those, the 36 hours of backfill mentor funding. You will still receive your funding to have those mentors on year 2 of the mentor training program next year. But that's when year 2 will end, at the end of next year. After that, it will just forever be one single year of mentor training. The mentor training program itself has been completely rewritten, so I'll show you what that looks like. It looks really good. It very much is something that would even benefit in general middle leaders in a school, because it focuses on really developing your mentors' skills as mentors rather than just sort of supporting them in their practical experience with the ECT they have in front of them. But it thinks more holistically about what we would want a mentor to look like and what sort of skills we would want them to have. So that's quite a shift. Let me go through 2 more points and then I'll pause and jump to the chat, because we had quite a few questions yesterday about funding on that. We are changing the online learning platform. So if you've been working with us this year, you'll be familiar with GTT. We are changing that online learning platform and it will be called Prism from September. It is changing for everybody, not just for your new year 1 ECTs. So all year 2 ECTs, mentors, year 1s, you as induction tutors will all be moved across to the new platform called Prism from September. And I've got some screen grabs to show you, but we have been working, I think we're 8 months in now, with the design team from Evidence-Based Education. And you might know them because they're the ones that have created GTT for us initially. We've been working with them for about 8 months now, constructing Prism from scratch. We have hosted a lot of focus groups. We've done user testing with ECTs that are currently on our program. Some of you as mentors have been a part, as induction tutors have been a part of those focus groups. So feeding back on the experience of using this platform. It is, I like to say, the things that we loved about GTT minus the things that we didn't love so much, because we have been able to create it and shape it from scratch. So really excited about this, really excited to show you in a little bit what it can do for you. And then on top of all of this, our design team have been asked to completely update all of the materials for the year 1 program, because it was a framework change. That means a change to the curriculum. Same thing happens in schools. I know we've all been there. Somebody introduces a new scheme of work and now you've got 3 months of PowerPoints to rewrite. And that's kind of where our design team found themselves as well. So we have updated our materials for the live training sessions for your year 1 ECTs. We've added in greater contextualization of their online self-study. We have SEND EYFS, alternative provisions, primary and secondary specific self-study. When an ECT logs on to Prism in September, they will be prompted at the very first point of call to declare what setting or what phase they work in. And from that point onwards, the entire website will be adapted in response to what they put. So if they put that they're a secondary school ECT, they will only see the secondary school scenarios. Everything will be placed within their context. Same for EYFS, same for alternative provisions, etc., etc. And if you've got an ECT, because I think I can see some of the wheels turning for my primary colleagues. If you've got ECTs who start out in EYFS and for whatever reason they have to move to a different key stage across the year or across the 2 years that they're with you, hopefully, then we can make that change very easily on the back end on Prism and make sure that they're seeing what is relevant for them. So lots of really, really good features coming through, lots and lots of scenarios and case studies coming from all of our partner schools across the country. Yeah, lots of really exciting stuff coming into the program from September. Okay, Kate, I'll admit I haven't had my eye on the chat this time because I wanted to.
That's okay. Yeah. We've just got one question here from Sarah.
Yep.
So Sarah's joining us from Heathcote and they're moving from one provider to the other. So how does that mentor training?
Say that again. What?
How does that affect mentor training? So what if we are moving from another provider, i.e. rep, we have a mentor in year 1?
Yeah, so rep is not considered a national lead provider. They're not one of the 6 kind of accredited lead providers like Teach First, UCL, National Institute of Teaching, obviously. They're a school-based provider, and what that...
They're not use UCL?
Yeah,
not make a difference?
But as a school model, And so their mentors wouldn't have received funding. The schools wouldn't have received the backfilled funding. So all of the mentors that join our program coming from REP will join as brand new year one mentors and eligible for that funding and for the training.
Okay. Thanks, Kyla.
Fine.
And then we've got another question here from Helena. When will we be moving to PRISM? Just want to get a head around it before to support ECTs and mentors. So probably a question about what support ECTs and mentors.
Not till September, which is why Kate and I are really emphasizing get your registrations done before the summer break so that there's no backlog at the DFE side of things. So that in September, when everybody comes back, everybody will already be on these platforms. But the platform is still very much under construction. So it's not live yet. I just had a meeting yesterday with the developers and we made another huge long wish list of more things that we want it to be able to do, and they've gone away and are working on that. So yeah, September. But Helena, have no fear, because there's going to be lots of like short demos, they're putting some guides together. That's happening all across August. So I'll definitely be dipping in, and you'll hear from me in early September with some support guides. And also, I think it's worth mentioning, like Helena, I think were an induction tutor with us when we did the transition from UCL to National Institute in the first place. That was going from one platform to a completely different platform made by a completely different organization. So UCL Extend looked and felt very different to GTT. But GTT is made by evidence-based education, and so is PRISM. And so the look, feel, approach of it isn't changing very much, except to streamline and make things a little bit easier. It's not going to feel like a completely new platform. It's going to feel like a hybrid GTT on steroids, if you will.
Mm-hmm. And then a question here about from Kerry, who has got an ECT1 who started with them in summer 2025. So in April, and she wanted to clarify as to what framework that ECT is going to be working on.
Oh yeah, so this is, and Carrie, you've probably been on the receiving end of some of our slightly confusing communications about this, because in the final hour, it's bizarre because it's not like them at all, but in the final hour, the DFE changed their mind on this group and allowed us to put the ECTs who started in April on the new program from September, when initially they had spent months and months telling us that any ECT who starts in April won't be allowed to join the new program from September. So that's why any ECT who has started in April is getting a bit of a light touch program right now. We're asking that they come to the national webinars. We're giving them access to some like self-study, I think via the website or like via a PDF. It looks a little bit different because from September, live with the brand new program for those. And we are fighting with the DFE right now to allow us to do that with our January start ECTs, but hold this space on that. I'll definitely be reaching out to induction tutors who have January ECTs in September to talk about what that's going to look like for them.
Can I just say that's brilliant news? I'm happy that because that's going to be easier, because otherwise she's going to be out the loop. I had another question. It's now escaped my head. Oh, I've been prompted to do the review for her for this week. Deadline is the 11th. Is that correct for her? So I still need to do that review for this first term?
Yeah, so she's a term 1 ECT.
Yeah.
She's term 1 PPR.
Okay,
yeah,
that's fine.
That's 11th of July.
Yeah.
PPR in autumn, end of year 1, spring 2026.
Okay, thank you.
And then another question here about Vasilina. What if you've done the mental training a few years ago? Do they need to do new training for the new framework?
No, and this is something that I wish I could have spoken a bit more about, but we just don't have the information or the detail from the DFE to speak about it to schools. But you may have seen updates about any mentor that you have who has done ITE mentoring previously, and the fact that they might not have to do the full ECT mentor training program. That is true. If you hear that, it's in the public domain, so you very well might see that somewhere. That is true. If you've got mentors who have previously done the ECF mentor training program in full, then they don't have to do the new program next year. And if you have mentors who have previously done ITE mentor training with a national lead provider, then that also affects how much of the ECF mentor training program they'll have to do. But what that looks like, we just don't have the guidance from the DFE to be able to say right now, but that is definitely coming in the pipeline as well. So this is what the year one program looks like. I'm going to stop talking for about 30 seconds. I'll let you digest that because there's quite a lot on the screen for you to look at. So each half-term ECTs will continue to have a module of study in year one. You can see those module titles along the top: behavior and relationships, memory and learning, etc., etc. They're all linked to the teacher standards and very similar to what ECTs in year one have been looking at this year, so that doesn't change. At the start of every half term, typically in weeks 1 to 2, every ECT will complete the core self-study. And the core self-study is like the foundational knowledge that we would expect our ECTs to have within the remit of that topic. And then from there, they'll go on PRISM and they'll complete a diagnostic. And the diagnostic is a series of 20 multiple choice questions, checking their understanding of the learning, but also their application of it in practice. So they'll be given phase specific and setting specific scenarios, and they'll be asked, like, what would you do essentially, or what should the ECT do? And then they'll answer their diagnostic questions. And from that, they'll get some guidance on areas that they should explore in a little bit more detail based on how they did on their diagnostic. And from there, they'll be guided towards what we're calling elective self-studies. Every half-term ECTs will be offered 5 elective self-studies. These are really focused in aspects of learning around a specific topic within that theme for that half term. So for example, autumn 2, memory and learning, one elective self-study might be on cognitive load. Another self-study might be on metacognition. Another self-study might be on retrieval practice. So it's the really bite-sized specific elements. And every half term, we're going to give your ECTs 5 of those, and we're going to ask that they pick 3 to engage with deeper. They can, by all means, go and do all 5. I'm sure we'll have some that will want to. I'm sure lots won't feel they have time, and that's fine too. The diagnostic will nudge them towards the 3 that they should be picking, but in every series of responses, regardless of how well or not well the ECT does in their diagnostic, it will say on the response page, and I'll show you this, discuss this with your mentor. So there's a lot of weight behind the mentor's like guidance and support through this process. And so by the end of week 2, we would expect that all of our year 1 ECTs will have finished their diagnostics. They'll all have read the core learning, and they'll be starting to pick their elective self-studies, and they'll spend the rest of the half term engaging with those, working on applying it to their practice. So in longer half terms, it might be that they're doing a self-study like every 2 weeks or so. In shorter half terms, they might do a few back to back. But yeah, there's an element of choice built inherently into the program now. Every half-term ECTs will have an in-person training session. Those are the local seminars. Those are 90 minutes in person at your local training venues. For most of you, that isn't changing from where your ECTs trained this year. Although I'm going to write to all of you in September to confirm where that is again for you, so that you know where your ECTs are going for their training sessions. And just keep in mind the way that we tried to do things this year. We sit on Google Maps. We make sure that your ECTs don't have very far to travel where possible. And then again, the national webinar series received really positive feedback. So we're bringing some of those people back, but we're also bringing new people as well. So we'll have experts in the field on those webinars. Those are online, 1 per long term. So the only thing I've not really talked about here are the arrows. If you've spotted the arrows going from autumn 2 to spring 1 to spring 2, well done you, A, for your eyesight, and B, for your curiosity and thinking, well, what's this about? Not only will ECTs have an element of choice built into their elective self-studies every half term, you as induction tutors or trust leads or head teachers or mentors will also be able to shape the sequence of the program in response to where your ECT is at any given time, or in response to your whole school CPD focus that half term, or as a trust in response to the trust direction for CPD that half term. So in Autumn 1, we want every single one of our Year 1 ECTs to be doing the Behavior and Relationships module. That's, I think, pretty obvious why we would want that. And then from Autumn 2 onwards, if you've got an ECT who's really struggling in Autumn 2 with adaptive practice, you can't afford, and your pupils, frankly, can't afford, for them to get to that learning in June. So you will have the ability to say, actually, ECT, don't do the memory and learning unit in Autumn 2. Instead, you're going to do adaptive practice. You declare that on Prism, and all of a sudden, they've got adaptive practice accessible to them, and they work through adaptive practice. The way that we've enabled the program to run like this is because we've decoupled the live training sessions from the self-study. So actually in their live training sessions, ECTs are doing scenario-based practice, and we're really working on like a composite model. So we're not just saying, okay, you turn up to your 90-minute training session and it is only on questioning. No, a composite model means we're looking at a holistic approach to the teacher, and we're working through scenarios together. We're applying the full range of their training, recognizing that they've already had a year of the ITT ECF under their belt. And because we've decoupled the live training sessions from the self-study, if you want to make use of the flexible sequence, you won't worry that your ECTs turned up to a training session feeling disadvantaged because they didn't do the reading from the default sequence. This is what we call the default sequence. So if you do absolutely nothing to Prism, this is the sequence with which the learning will appear for your Year 1 ECTs. But if by Autumn 2, you're starting to notice some things that mean you want to go in and rearrange, then by all means. And then what this looks like in practice is our training calendar. So this has been sent for the last month, maybe 2 months via our weekly bulletins. And I just wanted to draw your attention to Autumn 1 because there's a little bit more going in Autumn 1 than usual because we have to launch the program for all of our participants. So in week 2 and 3 of Autumn 1, we're going to do a series of introduction sessions. We're offering those online for all participants. And we're offering that as a menu for your mentors to pick one session to attend. And we've tried to stagger them throughout a day to hit everybody's availability. But we do want to see all of your Year 2 ECTs and all of your Year 1 ECTs together as a big collective group. In week 3, we are offering a menu again for your Year 2 mentors, and we ask that they pick one session to attend and they turn up. But then by weeks 5, 6, and 7, we've got some slightly longer in-person sessions for your ECTs. I wanted to draw attention to this specifically because for some of you with a slightly larger cohort, or perhaps you've got a small school, a very small school with just 2, 3 ECTs, and that would be like 30% of your staff body to release all 3 of those ECTs at the same time on the same day. So that might be a struggle for you. We recognize that. We know that it's a big ask for you to release your ECTs during the school day. So particularly I'm thinking in week 5 where the session will start at 2 o'clock. That might mean some of you need to release your ECTs at 1 so they can travel, or 1:30. And week 7, where the session for your Year 1 ECTs will start at 2 o'clock. In those instances, we are shaping some contingency plans. So please don't think, oh, this isn't going to work for us, so I'm not sending any of mine. Please, I'm just asking that you reach out to me and we'll arrange something, because we are putting in some contingency sessions that you just don't see on this training calendar. So we will be able to support you in alleviating the burden of some of that cover. And then this is just a reminder that the default sequence modules A to F is there on the table, but actually what that looks like for you at school level or trust level, and we know a lot of trusts are taking us up on this, and the trust leaders or directors of education are coming in and saying, actually, our trust would like to to have all of our year 1 ECTs learning in a different sequence, and that's absolutely fine. So it can be completely bespoke to your needs. And this is what the mentor program looks like. Really, really excited about this. I'm going to, again, be quiet for about 30 seconds, but I want you to pay attention to the titles of the self-study units and the titles of the local seminars, because this is what your mentors will be learning from next year. So like I said, lots of content in the new year 1 mentor training program that would be really great in developing any middle leaders or anybody that's responsible for line management across your school. We're building in flexibility and choice for your mentors as well. So we want all of our mentors in Autumn 1 to complete the self-study on deliberate practice, because every time your mentors meet with the ECTs, they should be doing deliberate practice. So we need to make sure that at least there's a level playing field in terms of knowledge and understanding around that across our mentor group. But from Autumn 2, for the rest of the year, mentors will have access to 1 self-study unit per half term. It's 30 minutes, but that's probably a stretch. They're really bite-sized units of learning. And we're just asking that mentors pick 2 for the rest of the year. They can surely engage with however much they want to, but at a baseline, they just need to pick 2. And that we anticipate will roughly work out to be 1 self-study per long term, although they can chunk it however they'd like to. We are going to ask that we see your mentors for 1 90-minute training session per long term. Next year, all of our mentor training is in person. That's quite a change from this year, where all of our mentor training was online. And then the mentors will continue to be invited to the national expert webinars as well. Totally optional for them, though we do get quite a few mentors who take us up on that. And then one more slide, Kate, and then I will stop for a bit. Year two hasn't changed. So for those of you that have worked with us this year 2 is as it was this year. For those of you that haven't worked with us this year 2 looks at developing our ECTs research and evidence literacy. So we give ECTs 3 different research summaries per half term. We're going to ask that they pick 1 and they work on implementing the findings from that 1 piece of research into their practice, and they work in development cycles with their mentor in doing that. But there's a real focus on applying learning from across our sector into their practice to help shape their practice. Okay. Will we have access to the new resources? By resources, well, I mean, I actually, it doesn't matter what I ask you, because the answer is no, because PRISM is not launching until September. But I think if you're looking for self-study itself is still on GTT. You can find that. So maybe I'm not understanding what you mean by resources. Were there any other questions, Kate? You're muted.
Sorry, I just have a question on the previous slide about the mentor training. How many is it? Yeah, thank you. I can see Autumn 1 to Summer 2. How many of these do the mentors do?
So we ask all of our mentors to do the deliberate practice self-study in Autumn 1.
Yeah.
And then from Autumn 2, for the rest of the year, they just do 2 more. So across the full year, it's 3 self-studies. And the self-studies are learning on mentor skills. They'll be hosted on PRISM. On average, they're expected to take about 30 minutes, but from what I've seen so far, that's a stretch.
Okay, thank you.
That's fine. Is it Yunji?
Hi, it's Unji.
Hi, sorry about that.
Hello, that's okay. Sorry, just to clarify. So I was a year 1 mentor last year. So obviously I need to do the year 2 mentor training. But as the induction tutor, I thought it'd be useful to be able to see both the training available to the new mentors.
No, that won't be live till September. It's actually still going on under call off by the DFE. So it just means like contractual things. We're still submitting some of our resources to the DFE.
Oh, that's fine. I just mean in September, will I be able to see both so that I
yeah.
know?
Yeah. Because you'll be given an induction tutor account.
Thank you. And then, sorry, I had one more for the mentor training. On the key dates document, it says the mentor year 2s are also in person. So is that any mentor? It'll be in-person training.
Yes, year 1, year 2, all of our training sessions are moving to in person, with the exception of those introduction sessions in weeks 2 and 3.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry, just one final question on the mentor training for mentors.
Yep.
I know you said they all do the autumn one, and then they pick 2 others between autumn 2 and summer 2. Do
Yep.
they have to do the same as the ECT or?
No, so the mentor self-study is exclusively on developing mentor skills. So the ECTs won't ever see what the mentors are learning in their own self-study.
Okay, thank you.
That's fine. Polly?
Hiya, sorry. I'm new to all of this.
Yeah, it's fine.
So I'm just and I'm sure it's just been answered, but I just so I'm not over confusing myself too much. And I know we keep going to the mentor training. Is that the induction mentor, or is that the mentor, or is it both of us from the school?
So induction tutor is separate, should be separate to the mentor. What you're looking at right now is the training program for the mentor who's going to work on a day-to-day basis with the ECT.
Fantastic. Thanks ever so much.
You're welcome. Hi, Leah.
Hello. Sorry, just with the mentor self-study then, will they still have access to see what the ECT self-study's been if they're only having to complete 3 of 5? Because obviously that's quite helpful in them planning out their meetings, isn't it, normally, seeing what they've done?
Yeah, so as long as you as induction tutor have paired your ECT and your mentor, you'll still have to do that on Prism, just like you had to do this year on GTT. If your ECT chooses a bespoke sequence, it will automatically shift and apply the sequence to the mentor view as well. And what you're asking about is in the blue boxes along the screen. So those are the mentor support materials. Every half term, your mentor will get like the high level summaries of what the ECT is learning. That will sit separate to the mentor self-study, which is training mentors how to be mentors. The mentor support materials provides them with the more like logistical, here's what your ECT is learning, here's sort of questions you could ask them and help them. Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, I fully appreciate that we've got 2 minutes to go. I can definitely cram these 4 screenshots into those 2 minutes, so I absolutely will, because I think you're going to really like what Prism is going to offer. So one of the things that we fed back to evidence-based education is that GTT doesn't allow induction tutors to do enough. We want induction tutors to be able to do more and see more on the platform, all in one space. So this is what your induction tutor monitoring dashboard is going to look like from September. For each ECT and mentor that you've got, you will see all in one place their attendance to live training sessions, whether they have or not, their engagement with the self-study modules that they have selected to complete, or the default sequence if that's what they're following, any scheduled and missed mentor meetings, and the frequency with which mentor meetings are being completed. And you'll also be monitoring your mentor's engagement with their self-study as well. So the big difference here is that, because you could always see in a very, very, very tiny bar chart on GTT what your mentor is engaging with on their, what your ECT is engaging with on their self-study, but you had to wait for our team to email you to know if your ECTs attended training or not. And if we were still chasing them for catch up, all of that's going to be on Prism now for you to have a look at on your single dashboard. And you can see kind of how that's going to be visualized for you there. You'll have kind of a participant management section on Prism. So you'll see your ECTs and your mentors here on little tiles. From here, you can see the sequences that they've picked, if they've picked more bespoke sequences. Mentor meetings are still going to go on Prism, but we are really slimming that back, really streamlining that, and lots of work is going into putting together short, snappy demos for September for your mentors on this. But we are keeping the pre-populated agendas because that was something that came through from the mentor focus groups that they really appreciated having. Okay, fully appreciate that I didn't get to dive too deep into PRISM, but that's also it is just meant to be a bit of a teaser. You're going to see a lot in September. So before we wrap up, just a final plea, make sure you register your ECTs and mentors on the DFE portal. Make sure you register them with us. Make sure you add your ECT and mentor training dates into the school calendar. Contact me if any of the release over autumn 1 is going to prove challenging for you, and I'll talk you through some of our contingency options. And then make sure you've registered with the appropriate body. And if that's Harris, it's via ECT Manager. So sorry to have run over by 1 minute. Thank you so much, everybody. I appreciate time is super precious. So really appreciate your time this afternoon. Kate and I will hang on for a little bit for those that had questions. But yeah, I think I'll stop the recording now and then we can get to some questions. Thanks, everyone.
Hi, Kyla, it's Ruth.